London, 1994. A billboard stops traffic. A blonde in black lingerie gazes down from the skyline, lips parted, eyes daring. Two words sit beneath her smile. "Hello, boys." It wasn't just an ad. It was a cultural explosion. Drivers crashed their cars. Newspapers called her the face that made Britain blush. Feminists debated her. Men worshipped her. And fashion turned her into a global fantasy overnight. But fame, when it arrives like a lightning strike, leaves a scar. Behind that smile was a woman who began to wonder, what happens when the world loves an image of you that isn't really you? When desire becomes a cage. This is not just the story of a model who seduced the world. It's the story of how she learned to take herself back, of how Eva Herzigová, the Czech bombshell of the 90s, went from billboard goddess to a woman who walked away from everything, on her own terms. She wasn't born into glamour. Eva Herzigová came from a small industrial town called Litvinov, deep in what was then Czechoslovakia, a place of gray skies, concrete buildings, and quiet dreams. Her father worked in an electrical plant, her mother a secretary. In that world, beauty was never a career. It was a distraction. As a teenager, Eva was tall, awkward, with sharp cheekbones that hinted at something cinematic, but she didn't know it yet. Her confidence came not from mirrors, but from movement. She loved sports, laughter, and the idea that life might exist beyond the borders of her small town. In 1989, the Berlin Wall was falling, and Europe was cracking open. For Eva, history shifted in a single moment, when a friend convinced her to enter a local beauty contest in Prague. She didn't expect to win. She barely understood the world she was stepping into. But on that stage, under the bright lights, something clicked. A scout from Paris saw her, saw the cheekbones, the eyes, the spark, and made a call that would change her life forever. At just 16, Eva boarded a plane for the first time. No English, no money, no sense of what waited ahead. Only a ticket to Paris, and the promise of something larger than herself. Paris didn't whisper her name, it announced it. Agencies loved the geometry of her face, those cheekbones that carved light, the feline eyes that could flip from innocence to provocation in a single blink. Editors saw something else: control. Yuva learned poses like a language, her body punctuating sentences the camera wanted to write. The first test shoots brought a quick escalation. Lookbooks turned to editorials. Editorials turned to covers. She wasn't just photographed, she was directed into becoming an idea, and she mastered it. A tilt of the chin softened the steel. A half smile detonated a page. While the 90s supermodel pantheon roared, Naomi's power, Cindy's all-American ease, Claudia's ice-cool glamour, Yuva cut through with the European cinema allure. Sensual, witty, a little dangerous. Runways confirmed it. On Dior, Versace, and Chanel, she learned tempo, the slow burn, the hard stop, the micro pause that lets a dress exhale before the flash. Backstage, she studied everything: how makeup could sculpt a character, how lighting decided who won the night. What looked effortless on the catwalk was, in truth, tactical. Step length, head angle, glance direction, each calibrated to make an image live longer than the show itself. Then came the moment that would rewrite her career: the Hello Boys campaign. A single billboard and the world stared up. It was audacious by design, a wink, a dare, a punchline that needed no translation. The ad didn't simply sell lingerie, it sold a jolt of confidence, an electric, cinematic pause in the middle of ordinary life. Traffic slowed, headlines multiplied. Culture argued, and Yuva's face became a shorthand for 90s seduction. Overnight, she moved from model to symbol. Symbols travel. She crossed borders from high fashion to mass recognition without losing the polish of the runway. Magazine covers chased her. French, Italian, British editions battled for the image that would define their month. In editorials, she could be a silver screen siren one day and a stark, modernist statue the next. Designers understood that hiring Yuva did two things at once. It made a product desirable and a story inevitable. What separated her wasn't only beauty, it was authorship. She learned to steer the room. On set, she negotiated with the camera. Faster here, cleaner there, a sharper crop, a quieter hand. Photographers noticed she could deliver the frame in fewer takes, yet still leave room for surprise. Designers trusted that the woman who conquered the world with a smile could just as easily strip a picture down to line and form. That duality, bombshell and architect, widened her map of work. With visibility came the big stages beyond Fashion Week. Red carpets turned into auxiliary runways. Cannes became a second home for her image, a place where a gown could ripple across news cycles before a premiere even began. Interviews revealed a dry wit that kept the sex symbol narrative at arm's length. She could lean into it when the job demanded and cool it the moment lights cut. The public saw one image, her collaborators saw a strategist. The commercial world noticed too. Beauty contracts, fragrance stories, luxury campaigns. She translated the billboard's heat into long-term equity. Brands didn't just rent her looks, they borrowed her certainty. She projected the kind of composure that makes consumers feel like they're buying into a mood as much as a product. In an era when attention was loud, Yuva's control was louder. By the middle of the decade, she had achieved the rare balance, ubiquity without fatigue. The face was everywhere, but never careless. The body language was inviting, but never unguarded. She turned the oldest trope in fashion, the male gaze, into a duet she conducted. It wasn't rebellion shouted from a rooftop. It was agency played in a major key. This was the summit. Campaigns that became cultural reference points, runways that treated her like a returning headliner, magazines that understood a cover with Yuva meant sales, conversation, and a little controversy. She had learned the mechanics of spectacle and the privacy within it. To the outside world, the story looked simple. A girl from Lit-Nevin takes Paris, then takes the planet. Inside, the calculus was more intricate. How to stay visible without becoming consumed by the very image that fed the machine. Fame is seductive until it isn't. For Eva Herzigová, the same light that had once elevated her now became blinding. The Hello Boys billboard had immortalized her, but it also locked her in place. Everywhere she went, people expected that smile, that confidence, that version of her that existed only in pixels. By the late 90s, the world of supermodels was shifting. The heroin chic wave had arrived, pale, angular, and deliberately detached. Eva's sunlit sensuality suddenly felt too glamorous, too classic, too woman. Fashion had a new obsession, irony. Eva, who had built her name on strength and charisma, began to feel like an artifact from another era. But fading was never her instinct. She kept working with Dior, Versace, and Guess, yet the pressure mounted in silence. The constant scrutiny, the endless travel, the demand to remain forever flawless. Even in interviews, she hinted at the toll of being everyone's fantasy. You live for the camera, but the camera never really sees you. Then came the kind of storm that doesn't appear in magazines. Heartbreak, exhaustion, the slow erosion of self that comes from being admired but rarely understood. After years of commanding the world's attention, she suddenly craved invisibility. For a while, she disappeared from the runway circuit. No scandalous headline, no grand announcement, just absence. And in that absence, the world that once celebrated her moved on to the next face, the next trend, the next obsession. But Eva wasn't finished. Behind the stillness was transformation, a woman dismantling the myths she'd built, learning who she was without the gaze, without the flash, without the echo of "Hello, boys." When Eva Herzigová returned, she didn't chase the spotlight, she redefined it. Gone was the young bombshell of the 90s. What emerged was a woman who owned her image, her silence, and her power. Her comeback felt different. Covers for Vogue Italia and Harper's Bazaar portrayed not provocation, but poise. Designers like Dior and Louis Vuitton called again, drawn to a maturity that couldn't be staged. Eva no longer played a fantasy, she embodied reality. Motherhood shaped her world, 3 sons and a new kind of purpose. Being a mother, she said, taught me to stop pretending. That quiet honesty became her new allure. She never rejected her past, she reframed it. The "Hello Boys" ad, once a cage, became a symbol of fearlessness. Now, in her 40s, she carried the same confidence, but deeper, wiser. In an era obsessed with youth, Eva proved that authenticity never ages. She walked slower, spoke softer, but her presence had only grown louder, the mark of a woman who'd reclaimed her story. Time has a way of sorting what was noise and what was truth. And when it comes to Eva Herzigová, the noise has faded, but the image remains. That billboard may have sold a bra, but it also sold an idea that confidence could be dangerous, and that beauty, when owned by the woman herself, could be revolutionary. Decades later, Hello Boys is still cited, studied, argued over, yet the woman behind it outlasted the controversy. Eva didn't just model fashion, she modeled evolution. She proved that a supermodel could grow older without vanishing, could be sensual without surrendering to objectification, could step off the runway and still command a room. Her career became a quiet manifesto against the industry's obsession with youth and perfection. In an era of filters and fleeting fame, she remains a reminder of something deeper, that real allure comes from not what's shown, but from what's withheld, that the truest seduction lies in authenticity. Eva Herzigová began as an image, but became a statement. She walked through the fire of fame, learned to own the reflection that once belonged to the world, and gave it back on her own terms. She didn't just redefine beauty, she redefined freedom.